Hi, welcome to Win-Win Conflict Resolution. Successfully used even in divorce cases. I hope that sounds like an ad. This is week 14, and this is Let's Talk Turkey with Janie Turk. I'm glad to see you. Win-win conflict resolution is one of the most important skills you can have if you want to live a happy and successful life with other people. And I think you do. So let's talk about it. And I got to start by telling you that compromise is a dirty word. Now, I know that your whole life you've heard people say you just got to compromise, or you watch those HGTV shows and they're like, you got to compromise what you want. But on some level, you know that compromise is a dirty word. And if I say, in order to succeed, you have to compromise your values or compromise your integrity, you know there's something wrong with that picture. So let's talk about why compromise is a dirty word, and hopefully I'll talk you out of it. So compromise is a dirty word because by definition, it is lose-lose communication. Compromise means nobody gets what they want. By definition, why are we aiming for that? Why are we aiming for the lowest possible denominator? I'll be unhappy, but at least you'll be unhappy too. And totally cool with that, dude. Come on, we can do better. We can do way better. Compromise is a dirty word because both parties feel like they've sacrificed more this time, and so next time it's going to be their turn. So if I'm craving a lobster dinner and you're craving Mexican food, and we compromise and go out to the local seafood house, you're thinking you won. But I'm thinking it's a place that I didn't really want to go, but you did. So I'm thinking in my heart of hearts that next time I get to choose. But you're thinking the same thing. And that leads to resentment. We both feel like we are giving up more than the other person, and that makes sense because we feel our losses more significantly than we're ever going to feel anybody else's losses. But that leads to that resentment, which means that compromises fail over time. Because over time it gets worse and worse and worse. I keep feeling like it's my turn and more resentful that you don't feel the same way. And our commitment to that compromise then fails, and the compromise itself breaks down. Let's spend just a second talking about win-lose. Win-lose can be a form of compromise, but it's definitely a position that is played when one of the parties feels like they have more power than the other party. And so if I feel like I can make this happen in my HOA and I bring down the rules on you, and eventually everybody moves out so my HOA fees go up because there aren't as many people to support it. I won in the beginning. I got to impose my will, and I lost in the long run. Everybody lost in the long run. So win-lose is not where you want to be. So that leaves us with win-win, which is a lot easier than you think it is, and it's definitely a life hack to making your life better. So win-win does take more time. You've got to figure out what everybody wants and figure out a way to make all of those things happen at once. It does require everybody's participating, because if what I ultimately want out of this conflict is for you to lose, win-win's not going to be possible. So it requires everybody to participate. And here's the thing. If in our lives we routinely go through win-win and we both feel like we're winning, like regularly all of the time, then guess what? If something comes up and it's not possible for me to win, I'm going to be way more accepting of that. And same about you. Because if we feel like we're winning all of the time, taking one for the team isn't that big a deal. So, something to think about. Before we go any farther, I have to talk about underlying issues. Granted, I am not a formal social psychologist who spent a million years and $1 million studying this. I have spent a good portion of my career, and I've done some good research on it, and I'm convinced that there are 3 possible underlying issues that are underneath every single, at least one of them, every single conflict. And here's the thing. If you don't solve those underlying issues, you are playing a giant game of whack-a-mole, because what you're solving is the symptom, and if you don't get those underlying issues addressed, your moles are just going to keep popping up out of those holes. So what are those 3 issues? The first one is power and control, and this one is really tricky, because here's the thing. We all want power over our own lives and control over our own lives. But we also want some control over your life. I want some control over how loud my husband has the volume on the TV when I'm trying to sleep at night, right? And so it's negotiating those power and controls issues in ways that we can all live with, in ways that we can all win. Attention or affection. So it's kind of the same trigger, but in different relationships. So I want a figurative pat on the back from my boss and a literal hug from my husband. So it's that attention affection dynamic that, at least in America, we're not really good at asking for our needs to be met. And so if we're not getting our needs met in those ways, we often can have that whack-a-mole pop up and cause all kinds of conflict. And finally, and I'm not going to sing it to you because, I love you, but I hope you hear it in Aretha's voice. We need that respect. And remember that respect will look different to each one of us, but if we're not feeling respected, it can often be a source of conflict. And we can respect someone without them seeing it. So realize that it might be an issue for someone else, even though you feel like you're showing respect. They may not feel it. So those are the underlying issues. And I want you to look at them both in terms of your underlying issues, but also try and consider what your partner's underlying issues might be as well. I hope this theory is useful to you. So let's talk about the steps. So we identify the underlying issues. We've talked about that. This is huge, though. You can't go to, I want this to happen. If you already have a solution in mind, you are not doing win-win, sister. If you already have a solution in mind, you're trying to manipulate the other party into doing what you want. And that's win-lose, which over time will become lose-lose. So don't look at the outcomes. And for me, the easy way of distinguishing between the two is I need the kitchen to be clean, not I need you to do the dishes. And so if there's a thing I want, a need I need met, and I don't distinguish between needs and wants. I think that's just a petty argument that we don't need to go down. If I simply focus on, I need a clean kitchen, it can get there. I can clean it. I can hire somebody to clean it. You could clean it. We could barter with somebody to clean it. We could burn the house down and start over. Don't do that, please. We could eat takeout and paper plates and go to garage sales and buy cheap dishes and throw them away when we're done with them every night. I don't know what your solution's going to be, but you can, when you get to the brainstorming part, that's super fun. You can figure out a way to get there, but here we're looking at the need that you need met. So next we're going to make a date, and this isn't about the date. This is about how you express to the other party that you need to have this serious conversation. So let's start with what we typically do. We typically say, we need to talk. At which point everybody's terrified and nervous and stressed and defensive, and that never goes well. In fact, the other person may be so stressed that they're like, let's do it right now and get it over with. And then, even though they were the ones that said, let's do it now, they're going to end up feeling ambushed. Not going to work out for you. Instead, you want this to be you being real and genuine and being reassuring and giving them enough information so they know what to think about, and expressing confidence that you're going to get to that right answer. So it could be I know we've been having some stress lately about getting housework done. And so I want us to sit down Friday night, have a couple of beers, figure out a way we can make this work better for us, because we got a great thing going here. We've got to be able to come up with a good solution. That sounds a lot more inviting than we need to talk, right? I hope we're right. The next step is to express your needs. And so we're jumping forward in time to our date. And this is where you practice saying how you're going to say it. You practice the saying of, I need the kitchen to be clean. And I don't know what it's going to take to get there. And this is driving me nuts. My favorite story involved a student who was working full time, as was her husband. And at night she was taking night classes and being a full-time student. And at night he was taking care of their, I think, 3 kids. And it was chaotic. The kids didn't like the food he cooked. When she would get home from night classes, the kitchen would often be a disaster, and maybe the kids hadn't done their homework, and maybe they hadn't had baths. And her husband was frustrated and fed up and trying so hard and getting nowhere with it. And she was dreading going home after class, feeling super stressed. And so they had these conversations where she said, let's talk about evenings, because this clearly isn't working for us. And she told him her stresses. And then she walked him through a paraphrase. And that's just basically saying something along the lines of, I want to be sure I'm communicating clearly, so can you tell me what you heard? Because often we listen defensively. And so if what he heard was, you think I'm a terrible cook, she needs to clear that up before they can go on to solving the problem, so they can be focused on the right thing. And then after you've expressed your needs and walked them through a paraphrase, then it's time to ask them what they need. So, honey, what is it you need out of this situation? And as I remember correctly, he said kind of the obvious stuff. He needs to feel like his work is valued. He needs to feel like he's not fighting with the kids every night, and that dinner isn't a big clusterfuck every night. And he needs to feel like at the end of the day that he gets some rest time too, and that everything isn't a struggle every single day. Basically the same thing she was feeling. And then, proving that she was listening, she paraphrased back. And that's what you need to do. You need to paraphrase back. And then the fun part, brainstorming solutions. And so there's all kinds of ways you could have resolved this. When I was reading her paper, I was thinking, I'm the queen of crockpots. I'm totally going to be setting up crockpot meals. And many of you today do meal prep for the whole week, which is amazing, and I am not organized enough to do. But that might be one of your solutions that would work for you. It might have been that the family take cooking classes together, and then everybody cooks a different night of the week. So, on Mondays she does a crockpot meal, and on Tuesdays the oldest teenager cooks, and on Wednesdays dad cooks, and on Thursdays the middle kid cooks. There could have been all kinds of solutions like that. And the one that they brainstormed that I'd never even heard of before, and the one that they chose, was they chose a food co-op. And so the way that this worked was they were with 5 or 6 other families, and they chose Saturdays as their day. And so Saturdays in the afternoon they'd go to Costco and they'd shop, and then they'd go home, and mom would help orchestrate this all, and all of them would get in the kitchen and they would cook this big meal for their family and 5 other families, and go deliver these meals to the other 5 families. And then every other night of the week some family would show up and deliver them food. And it was incredibly awesome because it was super, super cost effective. It's way cheaper to make one big meal than to try and rotate through 7 different meals. And then once a month, they would sit down with the other families and they would come up with a menu for the month. Things that everybody was comfortable cooking and eating and accommodated their needs and their likes. And just a super awesome solution that I'd never heard of before and really creative. And oftentimes we come up with a solution and we've put a lot of work to get here to this point, and we're like, phew, we are done. But you're not done. It's really important that you don't forget this next step. And this next step is to plan to revisit. This next step says, we know that things are never going to go exactly as we planned. So we want to give ourselves a month or 6 months or a week, whatever it's going to be appropriate for your particular solution. And then sit down and say, okay, what's working? What are we going to keep? What's not working that we need to fix? Or maybe if none of it's working, we need to go back to the other brainstorm solutions or come up with an entirely new one. If you have that plan to revisit, though, you don't just sit and silently seethe, saying, I put too much work into this, so I'm not willing to complain about it after we, did all this work to come up with this solution. So the plan to revisit is really important to make sure that you've come up with a winning solution that's truly going to make everybody involved happy. It's really important. Okay, so let's kind of walk through what this would look like. I like to talk about vacation planning in part because if you ask my family, they will tell you about the worst vacation ever that was entirely my responsibility. So think about what you need when you go on vacation. And I clearly didn't think about what anybody, including myself, I didn't think about what anybody needed on vacation because my number one thing is sleep. So if I'm going to go on vacation, I want to sleep. I preferably want to sleep out in the sun, on a beach, near water. But I need to get caught up on my rest, always. So what do you need? Do you need it to be with family? Do you need it to be with friends? Do you need it to be in isolation? Do you need it to be at a new place, brand new? Or do you seek the comfort of a place you love to go back to? So brainstorm the things you need. And then start by looking at your underlying issues. So when you're planning a vacation with someone, is power and control the most important thing? It's okay if it is. You just need to understand it. Is it that you need that affection, attention? Is it that you need that respect? Whatever you need, it's okay to need. Acknowledging it will help you to get it. Don't start from, I need a vacation to the Isle of Crete where I'm going to spend 14 days in the sun. Start with the underlying issues and then what you need. So I need a place where I can have lots of downtime. My family needs a place where they can be out in nature. My son is more needing a place where he can do thrill-seeking kinds of things. I probably want to get in a little bit of shopping, a little bit of retail therapy. My husband wants to see new sites, maybe historic ones. So I want to look at all of those things. And still, we haven't got a specific time and place and date. You want to be thinking about what those needs are. So then the make a date is going to be fun, right? It's going to be, hey, this year, we both have 14 days of vacation time. Let's plan to spend them wisely. Let's sit down and figure out what we want out of a vacation and how we want to spend those days. In the United States, you don't get very much vacation time, so you got to really think very carefully about how you want to spend it. So I know that if we sit down and plan together, we're going to have a great year, right? So you make that date in a way that's reassuring. And then when that time comes, you say, okay, I've been thinking about this. So, maybe I want some time with my family, but I also want some time away from my family. Or I really need to go someplace I have never been before. Or I haven't been to this place in years and I really want to go back. So that might be on my list. So you want to think about the things that are going to make up for your vacation. And then, of course, you want to walk them through a paraphrase. Then you want to say, so what do you want from vacation time? And prove you're listening and paraphrase to them what they said. And then the fun part, brainstorming solutions. So your solutions might involve your budget. They might involve this year and next year and 5 years from now. So you might say, let's have some buckets. This is something that we could do this year. This is something we probably can't do for a while. We need to save up for that one. Or we have lots of weddings to go to this year, so maybe this is a year that's not really going to be about us, but it's going to be more about family and friends. So figure those kinds of things out, brainstorm that list of solutions, and then choose one or choose a combination of several of the things that made your brainstorm list. And then, because you remembered, you also need a plan to revisit. So when it's a short-term thing like a vacation, it might be when you get back and that you want to sit down a couple days later while you're in the middle of folding laundry and having a beer, and you can talk about, okay, so what worked on this? What do we want to do different for our next trip? Or what do we want to do differently next year? So it's easy. And out of this, you can get a win-win solution where everybody gets their needs met, where your lives are happier. I think that's worth a little extra time. So let's try it with another scenario. And feel free to pause this and play it out as you think about what you would say or you would do in the to move or not to move question. So this is something that many of you are going to face, whether it is a job opportunity that is not where you are now, or a family situation that may indicate that you need to move back home, or a desire to live outside of the country or study outside of the country. So let's talk through it. And the talk throughing it isn't going to be immediately deciding to move or not to move. It's not going to be that pro and con list you've heard about your whole life, which, by the way, I would love it if those work, and they totally do not. Instead, it's going to be about going through the win-win process. So, what are your underlying issues? Not your outcome. Not, I want to live in Ireland for a year, but I want job opportunities, or I want to explore the world. And then, how do you have that conversation? So, let's talk about some long-term planning. What is life going to look like for us for the next 5 or 10 years, or maybe even the next 20 or 30 years? And you wanted this conversation, so you got to start by saying, I would really like at some point in time to live with my parents, live outside of the country, be able to follow jobs. So think about what those needs are going to look like. Ask for a paraphrase. Ask them what they need. Prove you're listening. And the fun part, brainstorm solutions. So what could this look like? So if we never move, how can we meet my wanderlust needs? If we never move, how can we incorporate travel or taking care of our parents or seeing places in ways that we maybe could have seen through living there? How can we incorporate those needs? And if we do move, how can we incorporate the needs to live near family or live in a community like this one, or be close to my longtime friends or your longtime friends? So make sure when you're brainstorming solutions, you're thinking about creative ways of meeting everybody's needs. I mean, maybe it involves living someplace where you have a compound and everybody moves with you. Maybe it involves buying everybody in your family the kind of equipment so you can have family Zoom night. It could look like a lot of different things today. And so I just want you to be open to those possibilities. And when you're brainstorming solutions, be thinking about making everybody happy. And then choosing one together that you're like, or this combination of solutions would work really well for us. And then, of course, your plan to revisit. Okay, for class, discussion board. This is going to be a biggie. So your one post by Wednesday. This is going to be the most detailed post I've asked you to write. It's going to be the most complex. You can use your own situation if there's something going on in your life right now, or if there's something that happened 10 or 15 years ago that you're like, man, I wish I'd had these skills in because I could have solved this. You can do that. If you're not going to write a paper, though, you can use the vacation or you can use the move that I just finished discussing. But if you're going to write the paper, I encourage you to use a real discussion, a real conflict in your own life. But I don't want the other person's voice. I just want your voice and how you see it from all of the perspectives. Make sure that you cover all of the steps. And then by Sunday, read what your classmates have to say. Respond to one classmate constructively critiquing their use of the win-win method. This might look like saying, ooh, here's a solution that you didn't think about in your brainstorming that's really creative and cool and maybe would work for you. Or it might say, dude, looks like you really went into this with an outcome in mind. You might want to revisit it and start over some of the earlier steps without trying to push your partner into this particular solution. And then for your simulation journal, wait. When you do your simulation journal, wait until after you've done your win-win worksheet that you're posting in the discussion board. Wait until after you got classmate feedback on your discussion board post. And then go to your simulation journal. Title it Win-Win, the date you finally get around to writing it. Was this technique effective? Why or why not? So, do you think it would work? Did you try it? Did it work? Why or why not? What is it you need to do the next time you're faced with a conflict instead of compromising? Because don't compromise. Maybe a reminder needs to be compromise is a dirty word. And finally, is this skill integrated? Does this feel like something that you can do pretty easily and naturally? In case no one said it today, I love you. This has been Let's Talk Turkey, and I'm Janie Turk. If this is content you appreciate, please like, follow, and share. Have a great week.